This is episode 0, because all good devs know that arrays start at index 0. And because before we talk about leadership, careers, and building better teams, I want to set expectations. This episode is about what Lead Don't Ctrl actually means, why this podcast exists, and whether it's for you. If that sounds useful, keep listening. If not, no hard feelings. Episode 1 will still be here if you change your mind. Welcome to Lead Don't Ctrl. This is the podcast where we talk about tech, leadership, developer careers, and the stuff you don't hear in stand-ups or performance reviews. If you're tired of micromanagement, empty buzzwords, and leadership advice that sounds good but doesn't actually work, you're in the right place. I'm Nick. Let's get into it. Let's talk about why this podcast exists. I've been in tech long enough to see the same patterns repeat. Good engineers get promoted into leadership. They're smart, they care, they want to do the right thing. And then things get weird. Suddenly the job isn't about solving technical problems anymore. It's about people, priorities, communication, and pressure. Often with zero training. At the same time, we have an industry full of leadership advice that sounds good but falls apart in practice. Things like, just trust the process. Hold people accountable. Be more hands-on. None of that actually tells you how to lead. Lead Don't Ctrl exists because too many teams are suffering under bad leadership that isn't malicious, just uninformed. Let's talk about the name for a second. Lead Don't Ctrl isn't anti-leadership. I'm a leader myself. It's anti-micromanagement. Control-based leadership looks like constant check-ins, needing visibility into everything, confusing activity with progress. Leadership, on the other hand, is about clarity, trust, and creating an environment where people can do their best work. Control is about fear. Leadership is about responsibility. And too often in tech, we reward people for control because it looks productive, even when it quietly burns teams out. Let me be clear about who this podcast is for. This is for developers who are stepping into leadership for the first time, tech leads who feel stuck between writing code and managing chaos, managers who actually care about outcomes and people. If you've ever thought, why does this feel harder than it should? There has to be a better way to do this. I don't want to become the kind of leader I hated. You're exactly who I had in mind. And just as important, this podcast is not for everyone. If you believe people only work hard if you watch them, more meetings equal better communication, or fear is an acceptable management strategy, you're probably not going to enjoy this. And that's okay. This podcast isn't about winning arguments. It's about building better teams. Now a quick note on format so there are no surprises. This podcast is audio only and conversational. No interviews, no panels, no forced hype. Each episode usually, or at least sometimes, connects to a YouTube video, but goes deeper. Think of it like this. YouTube is the structured advice. The podcast is the context, the stories, and the nuance. Episodes are bi-weekly on purpose. This isn't about flooding your feed. It's about saying something worth listening to. On this podcast, we'll talk about real leadership mistakes, including my own, career advice that doesn't show up in job descriptions, why so many processes fail even when everyone is doing the right things, and how to lead engineers without controlling them. This isn't theory. It's lived experience from building, breaking, and fixing teams over time. If there's one thing I want you to take from this episode, it's this. Most leadership problems in tech aren't caused by bad intentions. They're caused by lack of clarity, lack of training, and pressure to look productive instead of being effective. You don't need to become someone else to be a better leader. You need better tools, better framing, and permission to stop controlling what you don't need to. If this episode resonated, here's what I recommend. Start with episode 1. It's called The Real Job of a Tech Lead That Nobody Trains You For. That episode gets into the practical reality of what changes when you move into leadership and why so many people feel lost when they do. This episode sets the context. Episode 1 is where the work begins. If this episode was useful, share it with someone who needs to hear it, especially if they're dealing with bad leadership. You can find me at leaddon'tctrl.com, and the short, structured version of this topic is on the Lead Don't Ctrl YouTube channel. Thanks for listening, lead well, and don't control.